Imagine a village where the only sound is the wind. No dogs barking, no birds singing, no children playing. Just the hollow whistle of the breeze through open doorways of houses that haven't seen a fire in months. In the center of the village, a man sits on a dirt path. He isn't moving, he isn't sleeping, he is simply waiting for the end, his skin stretched so tight over his bones that he looks more like a parchment-wrapped skeleton than a human being. This isn't a scene from a post-apocalyptic movie. This was the reality for millions of people in 1933. But there were no bombs, no invading armies, no natural disasters. The tragedy you're about to witness was engineered. It was a famine designed in an office in Moscow, signed with a fountain pen, and executed with the cold precision of a clockmaker. This is the story of the Holodomor, a word that literally translates to death by hunger. And by the time this story ends, you'll understand how one man turned the most fertile land on Earth into a sprawling graveyard. To understand the horror, we have to look at the prize, Ukraine. For centuries, it was known as the breadbasket of Europe. Its soil, the Chernozem, or black, Earth is legendary. It's so rich, so dark, and so nutrient-dense that you could practically grow a forest from a handful of seeds. For the Soviet Union, Ukraine wasn't just a territory, it was a gold mine. It was the fuel for Stalin's grand dream of industrialization. In the late 1920s, Joseph Stalin looked at the map of the Soviet Union and saw a problem. He wanted to turn a backward peasant society into a global superpower in just 10 years. To do that, he needed factories. To build factories, he needed machines. To buy machines from the West, he needed hard currency. And the only thing he had to sell was grain. But there was a hurdle. The grain was in the hands of the peasants, millions of independent farmers who had worked their own land for generations. Stalin didn't want independent farmers. He wanted collectivization. He wanted to take every small farm, every cow, every tool, and every seed, and merge them into giant state-run factories in the fields. The farmers resisted, especially the Kulaks, the peasants who were slightly more successful than their neighbors. In Stalin's eyes, being successful made you a class enemy. He didn't just want their land, he wanted them gone. He launched a campaign of dekulakization. Families were dragged from their homes, in the middle of the night, loaded onto cattle cars and dumped in the frozen wastes of Siberia. But the resistance in Ukraine was different. It wasn't just about land, it was about identity. The Ukrainians had a language, a culture, and a growing sense of independence. To Stalin, this was a dual threat. If he could break the Ukrainian farmer, he could break the Ukrainian spirit. And so, the trap was set. By 1932, the state had seized control of all the land, but the plan was failing. The new collective farms were inefficient. The peasants, stripped of their incentive to work, produced less. The quotas set by Moscow were impossible. They weren't based on what the land could produce. They were based on what Stalin needed to sell. When the harvest came in short, Stalin didn't lower the quotas. He raised them. He accused the Ukrainians of sabotage. He claimed they were hiding grain in secret pits under their floorboards or in their graveyards. He sent activist brigades, urban workers and party zealots, into the countryside. Their mission? To find every last kernel of grain. Imagine you are a mother in a small Ukrainian village in the winter of 1932. Your children are crying from hunger. You have a small bag of flour hidden in the chimney. Suddenly, your door is kicked in. Men with long metal prods enter. They aren't looking for gold. They are looking for food. They poke the walls. They dig up the garden. They even look inside the infant's cradle. They take the flour. They take the beans. They take the seeds you were saving for next year's planting. They even take the pot of soup simmering on the stove, pouring it out into the dirt just to show you who is in charge. This was the law of 5 ears of grain. If a hungry child was caught picking up a few stray stalks of wheat from a field that had already been harvested, that child could be shot or sent to a labor camp for 10 years. The fields were guarded by watchtowers and armed guards. The food belonged to the state, and the state decided you didn't deserve to eat. As the winter of 1933 deepened, the spiral began. Hunger is a slow, agonizing process. It doesn't just kill the body, it dissolves the mind. First, the villages went silent. The livestock were all gone, eaten or confiscated. Then the dogs disappeared. Then the cats. People began to eat boiled leather from their boots. They ate the thatch from their roofs. They ate earthworms and bark. But then it got darker. Reports began to emerge from the countryside that the Soviet government didn't want the world to hear. There are documents in the archives today that describe necrophagia. People, driven mad by the physiological changes of starvation, began to eat the dead. In some cases, parents were forced to choose which child to keep alive and which would become a meal. It is a level of psychological trauma that defies human language. And all the while, just a few miles away at the train stations, mountains of grain were being loaded onto cars headed for the cities or for export to the West. The smell of fresh bread wafted from the guarded silos while people died. On the sidewalk outside, you might wonder, why didn't they leave? Why didn't they walk to the cities? Stalin had thought of that. He introduced an internal passport system. Peasants were forbidden from leaving their villages. The borders of Ukraine were sealed by the OGPU, the secret police. It was a giant, open-air concentration camp. Ukraine had become a starvation zone, fenced in by bayonets and bureaucracy. But surely the world knew. Surely someone saw the smoke. This is where the story moves from a tragedy to a conspiracy. There were Western journalists in Moscow. One of them was Walter Duranty of the New York Times. He lived a life of luxury in Moscow, provided by the Soviet state. He knew the famine was happening. He even admitted it in private conversations. But in his articles, he called the reports of starvation exaggerated propaganda. He famously wrote, "You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs." Duranty won a Pulitzer Prize for his reporting on the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Gareth Jones, a young Welsh journalist who actually traveled to Ukraine, dodged the police and saw the piles of bodies for himself, was ridiculed and dismissed by the mainstream press. Jones told the truth and was later found dead in mysterious circumstances. Duranty told a lie and kept his prize. The climax of the Holodomor came in the spring of 1933. At its peak, it is estimated that 25,000 people were dying every single day. That's about 1,000 people every hour, 17 people every minute. By the time the harvest of 1933 finally arrived, between 4 and 7 million people were gone. The census of 1937 revealed the terrifying reality. The population numbers were so much lower than expected that Stalin didn't just suppress the results. He had the census takers executed. If the numbers didn't fit the narrative of a Soviet paradise, the numbers and the people who counted them had to disappear. For decades, the Holodomor was erased from history books. It was a non-event. In the Soviet Union, even mentioning the famine could get you arrested. It was only after the collapse of the USSR that the archives were opened, and the world finally saw the photographs, the death certificates, and the orders signed in red pencil. So why does this matter today? The Holodomor is a chilling reminder of what happens when a state decides that. An ideology is more important than human life. It shows us that food can be a weapon just as deadly as a nuclear bomb. It teaches us that the first step to genocide isn't always a gas chamber. Sometimes it's just a policy change and a well-funded propaganda machine. Stalin didn't just want to kill people, he wanted to kill the memory of them. He wanted to rewrite the DNA of a nation by erasing its most resilient sons and daughters. But he failed, because despite the blackboards, despite the sealed borders, and despite the decades of silence, the story survived. Human history is often written by the victors, but the truth is eventually told by the survivors. The Holodomor is a scar on the soul of the world, a warning that the thin line between a functioning society and a nightmare is often held together by nothing more than our willingness to speak the truth when it is most dangerous to do so. We must look into the eyes of the ghosts of 1933, not to dwell on the darkness, but to ensure that the silence never becomes that loud again. Because the most dangerous hunger isn't the hunger for bread, it's the hunger for power at any cost. If you found this deep dive into history important, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories that the world tried to forget. Share this video too. Keep the memory of the millions alive and leave a comment below. Did you know about the law of 5 ears of grain before today? Let's talk about it. See you in the next one.